Hi, I'm Katina Anglin, and welcome to another edition of A Good Show. With me today, I have Mr. Michael Myles. I told you Michael would be on. And today we're going to talk about some of the challenges that Michael endured to get to where he is at now. Michael is a Caymanian from Georgetown. And part of your success is built on the foundation of not being rich in actual fact. You obtained a scholarship to a university overseas and got your bachelor's degree in social work, and you did that for the last, you did that for about 30 years. Mike, would you please tell us some about yourself?
You know, I've been privileged. I grew up in a very small community of central Georgetown. Harlem is where I grew up, and I consider myself fortunate to have grown up in that community, because I grew up at a time in the 70s, 80s, and 90s where people cared. You know, people loved on each other, people disciplined, people encouraged, you know, people looked out for you. That's the community that I grew up in. I grew up in a single parent home, and with a mom who also demonstrated what hard work is. So I consider myself very fortunate. Certainly disadvantaged, but it made me stronger. And she never made us believe that we were ever disadvantaged, because I can tell you, I never thought about where my next meal was going to come from. I never thought about if I was going to be homeless or not, but I knew that my mother worked hard. I knew she worked a lot of long hours, and I knew she had a dream of protecting her family. She continues to be the matriarch of her family, and continues to do exceptional well for me. Now, as a grandmother, she continues to support me with my family and her brothers and sisters. But the community that I grew up in was very tight-knit, where anyone at any time could discipline you. And I don't mean discipline you like beat you, but chastise you, could address issues, you know, could contact your family. And, you know, we grew up in a time where there was no cell phones, and the average person didn't have a house phone, right? So people knew everything about your community. I chose social work because I wanted to serve. That's what I have done. I have served in a number of different capacities. So, you know, when I got a football scholarship, it's the only way that I would have been able to get off of our country and get my education. I never in a million years, Katina, really thought that I would actually get a scholarship, because the people in my community, we never went to college. You know, we went to work for the government, or we went to prison. I mean, that's what I saw, right? So my mother assured me that I was going to do something special. She pounded that in my head. She said, you know, you are going to be the game changer of our family. And she put a lot, certainly into me. She gave me a lot of responsibility. So the goal for me has always been, how do I give back? You know, how do I replicate the phenomenal things that my mother has given me, the value system that my mother has given me? Not perfect, but hard work, you know, commitment, determination, you know, believing that you can do well and excel, you know, and that's who I am. I mean, that's what I've carried through today. So
on last week's show, we were talking about the power of the two-parent household. And we had the privilege of interviewing Madam Speaker, Catherine Ebanks-Wilkes from West Bay. And Pastor Ellen was also here, who's not here with us today because she's off doing other pastoral works. And she has a history with a heritage of two-parent households. And of course, we looked at some of the statistics. We spoke to the fact that because you come from a single-parent household does not mean that you are doomed.
Nope.
And here you are attesting on the very next show to your mother's efforts to ensure that she provided for and equipped her children as far and as much as they needed to empower her children to be successful in life. Now, it seems to me that perhaps being a single parent is becoming something somewhat of a entitlement, a catchphrase, an excuse?
Yeah, or disadvantaged. You know, I mean, people. I work with a lot of single parents, fathers and moms. You know, more moms than dads, but I do work with a lot of single parents, and I sense they believe that they're at a disadvantage. I don't see the disadvantage. We have more in our country now, more access to so many things in our country now than my mother had when she was raising us in the 80s and 90s. So I have to remind them of all the phenomenal things that we have that my mother didn't have. She had to work 3 jobs. She went from being a stay-at-home mom to being husbandless, and my father was the main breadwinner, to saying to herself, oh wow, I now have to get back out to work. You know, when I was born, she stayed home with me, and she couldn't do that anymore. And then, you know, where we were living got real bad because in mid-80s, drugs broke out. You know, it was drugs everywhere in Harlem. It was drugs everywhere in the streets. You know, crack cocaine was the weapon of choice in our country. And I mean, people were disillusioned on how far reach that went. So she pulled us out of Harlem and said, I can't afford to lose my kids. And we were living, right? She basically said, you know, I'm going to do this. And she didn't just tell us, Tina, and I think what I try to get to a lot of single parents to have a clear understanding about, she rolled up her sleeves and she did it. She worked. She demonstrated that being a single parent isn't a handicap, you know, but it's now she had purpose. And her purpose was to protect her family, work hard, and ensure that she can do the best she can. Listen, man, not perfect. She'll tell you she made loads of errors, you know, in raising kids. But she did everything she possibly can to keep us safe, and that's what it was for me. She engaged us in sport. She engaged us in youth activities, church activities. She found everything that she can do while she was working. And when we weren't in those activities, we were with her at work. And she worked in the hospitality industry. My mother worked at the Holiday Inn, right? From there, she went into condo management. If we weren't playing football on a Saturday and she wasn't watching us, we were with her, you know, doing her business, you know, and she sold jewelry. I mean, she did whatever it took. What I sense today is that single parent homes have become this thing of, I can't do it. I don't want to do it, and the government should be doing it for me. And I think it's wrong. The government didn't, you know, the government wasn't involved when you were procreating. Why should the government have to raise your kids? The government's responsibility is to create opportunity for its citizens. And I think that our government does a fairly great job about that. There's some policies that I'm in disagreement with. But at the end of the day, I think overall the government does a fairly good job in providing us with opportunity. What I have also sensed is that we've given our people too much to a point where it's to our detriment. We simply don't want to work, you know, because our government continues just to pay out. And I think it's wrong. So single parent homes, I'm not saying it's not challenging. It is to have one parent raise some kids. It was hard for my mother. It was at times excruciating hard. But the community, she surrounded herself with the community. You know, she introduced us to people like Gillis Seymour and Jocelyn Morgan and Winston Jung, and I can tell you loads of phenomenal people. My mother never missed a reporting session, right? She came to every one of my football games. I played football sometimes 7 days a week. You know, if you know, she was there on a Saturday morning at my Pee Wee game. When I became more in the junior leagues, she was there on a Sunday evening when I played in, you know, in the Caymanian Football Association leagues. She was there. She was there when I played internationally. We went to Florida just about every year between 11 and 12 years old to about 18 years old. She gave me the money, but she also prepared me as well to say, okay, well, you need to do some stuff. So I had, a summer job. One of my first jobs was in construction, right? She engaged me in a number of things. She engaged my siblings in a number of things. Not perfect. I'm not here to say that single parent is not challenging. It is, but it's
possible to bring out great citizens from it.
Absolutely.
But I think from what you're saying, and my mother raised 3 of her 4 children, because one of her children was actually raised in New York by her father. So I've also watched my mother hard at work raising me, because by that time the other 2 children ahead of me were already adults. But I watched my mother apply herself. She worked 2 jobs also, but she also found programs for me as well in the Vacation Bible School. And so I think what our stories show is that even when you have a single parent household, there are a number of facets, a number of tools that must be utilized.
Absolutely.
One is the perseverance of the parent.
Absolutely.
Not giving up, not giving in, but being resourceful, being committed to your children's future. Every action that they take in the present is an action actually for the child's future.
Absolutely.
The child himself also being aware and engaged in their own success.
Yeah.
Having been encouraged on by that single parent, explaining the circumstances that they're in, and the roles that the parent is playing, and the role that the child needs to play and has to play, and how well they're playing it. And when it's time then to critique that child, critique the child positively, and the community. And I remember quite well that we had to walk a straight and narrow path, because the community had its eyes on us.
It does.
And different members of the community had different ways of chastising us. But the thing is that we weren't allowed to get away with the wrong.
Absolutely.
We were rebuked in the wrong. And now here we are as adults saying to the government and to other single parents that we need to embrace our responsibilities as individuals, as parents. The government has its responsibility towards every citizen in this country, but parents don't have the right to throw their kids on the government and expect that the government must provide programs and must provide resources. The government is there to assist each individual, because no man is an island. Everybody falls in need at some time, however that need identifies itself. Everybody falls in need of somebody at some time. The government has set programs up, put systems in place to assist each citizen to be able to get back on their feet and to progress as an individual. I know we have our challenges in the employment industry and lack of training and so on, and I know we're going to get around to that in just a few minutes. But parents don't have that privilege or that right to turn to the government wholeheartedly and say, my child needs food, my child needs clothes, my child needs shoes, and my child needs education. And then when my child leaves from school, my child must have a job. What you're actually saying is, I am not capable of being a parent when you throw yourself back and throw your children into the care of the government system.
One of the things that my mother have allowed us to do is fail. And sometimes that was the lesson. She taught me, I was put on I was telling our new group this week that this woman had so much confidence in my ability, certainly saw something more than I saw, that I had just turned 17. In 1990, I graduated from high school, the Cayman High School at 16 years old, and I had just turned 17 when I caught a flight in January. She put me in a plane to go to Kentucky to start my bachelor's degree. She didn't visit the school. She didn't talk to the coach. We got letters. There was no email. We didn't have no computer. There was no, I spoke to the coach a few times on the phone. But she put me on a plane and said, go get your degree. She had that level of confidence in me. She visited the school probably 2 years after I had finished my freshman and sophomore year, when she actually came to the little town in Kentucky that she had to catch 2 planes and drive over 2.5 hours. Right? That's the level of confidence. But she allowed me to fail, and she allowed me to learn from those failures. As a man, I have failed many times, but I believe that the foundation that she built for me allowed me to pivot, always pivot back. I was teaching our young folks this week that, just as I've done multiple groups, parents' responsibility is to give their children that foundation. Allow them to fail. I allow my daughters to fail because they need to have, you know, and failure in a more manageable way. Now, I'm not going to allow them to OD, you know, or do something crazy and off the wall, but kids need to learn levels of pain, because as an adult, when you can't get up after being kicked down, that's a major concern. And that's what's happening today, Katina, is that we are raising a number of young people that the parents of today are protecting every possible angles that they don't want their kids to feel any pain. You know, well, I'm a single parent, so I need to give my kids everything. I need to overcompensate now. So that's what I see a lot of, in particular, single parents are doing. My child need the $150 parachute because the kid in the 2-parent home have that. My child need the $1,200 video game because the other kid in the 2-parent home has that. And then when their kids aren't doing well academically, when they're not engaged in anything that's productive, then it's the government's responsibility, or it's, you know, the neighbor's responsibility, or it's social media's responsibility, and so forth. Whereas I'm not here to give my kids everything. I'm gonna take care of their needs, but the things that they truly want, they need to work hard for that stuff, because I need to work hard for my stuff as well. And I think that that's the message that I consistently give single parents. Your kid don't need the $1,500 cell phone. If they want that, they need to get a summer job.
They need to earn it.
Absolutely. It's all earned now rather than given, because it's this expectation that society owes me something. Because my mother gave me everything, so now society owes me something, and I shouldn't have to work hard, because I didn't have to work hard, you know, for the 16 years or 18 years of my of being at home. I am now seeing kids in their late 20s that have never worked in our country. 25, 26, their grandmothers are bringing them to me. They have never been employed, ever. And I'm like, how do you live? And I'm like, well, you know, my grandmother gives me money. For 15 years? Really? Wow. That must be amazing, right?
Now, overcompensation and creating emotionally fragile individuals who can't handle when you say no, when I say no, when someone else says no, and the sense of entitlement. And I think, Mike, that what is happening a lot in our society today, because of this overly protective approach that's happening. And I know that there are a lot of variables today that our parents didn't have to calculate. For example, we didn't have social media. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have Jordans. So all of that competition and those influences, they were out the window.
And most families didn't have TV.
So parentage today has some elements to it that our parents didn't have to endure. But in all of that, parents need to then be a whole lot more attentive to their children, because if they're not, they're ultimately setting them up for failure, a failure that they won't be able to pull their children out from, because they're now adults, and you've never allowed them to fail. You've never allowed them to stand on their own 2 feet. You've never allowed them to go out there and earn something. And so when they don't qualify for the job, or someone tries to correct them in a frame of thought that they have, all of a sudden the world is against them. And that's because they have not been allowed to grow, to truly grow. It's just been coddled all along, you know. And Mike, I know that you spent a lot of time in your work, trying to address another side of childhood, and that's juvenile delinquency.
Yeah.
And your mother fortunately pulled you out from an area in which you could have become influenced by your environment and those around you into certain behaviors that have led to juvenile delinquency. Now, you worked in social work for some 30 years altogether.
I'm still in social work.
Still in a different
I'm doing social work and training now. I'm doing social work and education, adult education.
Yes. So, some of the programs that you were instrumental in creating to arrest or intervene or prevent juvenile delinquency were programs like BEST.
Yeah.
You want to tell us some about those programs?
You know, I created the behavior education support team, and you know, the team was responsible for cutting across barriers in government. It's segmented, it's scattered. Social workers don't speak to X person, then you have mental health experts. There's very little communication. So my responsibility in the Ministry of Education was to bring all of these services together and communicate. For instance, the police department visit many of our homes, in particular of our most vulnerable families, but we never tap into the police department to be part of meetings to talk about the vulnerabilities of a lot of our children. We missed that opportunity. So I pulled all of these organizations together, and we would have BEST team meetings in all of our public schools. We identified all of the high-risk students and what their vulnerabilities were, what their resiliences were. We were able to, with me advocating on the outside, to address community needs that these youngsters need. The school is seeing a child fail, but they don't understand that that child is raising themselves, that child had to hitch a ride from West Bay or from East End to just get to school, or they don't have uniforms. I mean, I had young people who didn't go to school because they simply just needed a uniform, or they didn't have shoes, or they didn't have books, or they didn't have whatever. But all the school saw was a troublemaker, right? Or they had a parent that was in prison. They had an alcoholic parent that was the sole provider of them. These are the scenarios that in our country that we don't really talk about, but what we see is a mischievous child. We see a disrespectful child. We see a hostile child, and we exclude that child. We put that child out in the street, and then we're shocked when that child breaks into some place because of desperation, or they commit another crime or whatever. So BEST, was looking at a lot of that. What sprung out of BEST as well is the extended after-school program that we shared, right? Yes. So as I've said to you, I grew up in an after-school program. I played football 7 days a week. Monday through Friday, once I finished school, from 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock, or from 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock, we did our homework, and then Coach Gilly or another coach came in from 4 o'clock, and we played throughout. I was always in the national team program. I played club football, so I had loads of different training. My trainings at times started from 5 o'clock in the morning. The annex football field was, my savior. When I went on to the, you would have sometimes 200 players waking up at 5 a.m. in the morning from all over this country to compete for 20 spaces on the national team, and so I felt that I should give our kids that. We were successful in launching that program. I helped fund the program. I managed it from the Ministry of Education for about 2 years while I worked there. Today the program is now in every public school. It's now fully funded. The YMCA now manages that program. I brought in the SNAP program, Stop Now and Plan. It's a best practice program. That program is now certainly being managed by the Family Resource Center. We also looked at Youth Act. We launched Youth Act and Crime Prevention Days. You were heavily involved in that. Bonnie Anglin spearheaded that program throughout, and SNAP. We actually funded SNAP through Youth Act. And it was phenomenal. I mean, these are all really great programs. I also had like a community program where because the government would never give me the funds, or they never would give me access to funds. So I created a network of support. I had doctors, dentists, pediatricians, opticians, grocery stores. I had at least 10 organizations that when the school called me to say a child is needing these things, I could pick up the phone and say, hey, can you see this kid today? And it was done.
Now, it's a bit unfortunate, Mike, that the government, even until today, still does not see or is absolutely unwilling to still does not see or is absolutely unwilling to accept that not every human being is academically inclined. And that
I think they know.
I said it before. I love the mechanic. I'm totally inspired by him.
Yeah.
I'm amazed by him because he has a specific skill set. I don't understand it. To me, it's absolutely genius. The guy stands beside my car. He says, "Oh, he says it's this." Turn it off and let me have a look. And then he gets in there and he can't even see. Sometimes he's there and he got his tools and he's talking to you and everything, and he's talking about this and that, and the last time he's seen that person, he gets back out and he says, all right, he says, go ahead, so start it now. Right?
I love when it says start it.
And he says, see, I told you, so all right, go ahead now.
That is phenomenal skill.
Yes, and it's not embraced in Cayman. It's not highlighted. It's not exalted. But yet it's a talent. It's an intelligence. It's a profound intelligence, because all I see is a pile of metal and bolts and screws and wires, and it's a whole complete mess. And this guy is actually able to make this thing sing like a canary. But
I look at automotive, because they're no longer called mechanics, they're now technicians, and they are phenomenal people. I look at them no more. I look at a plumber, an electrician, an HVAC technician, a heavy equipment operator, no different than I look at a surgeon with a scalpel in their hands.
Very much so.
Same way, same level of skill set, just on different parts, different standards, different parts of the skill set. These people are highly skilled. I've enjoyed working with loads of talented young people. Our heritage, Tina, was what? In our country, we were boat builders, we were mechanics, we were fishermen. Correct. Like we were home builders. That's what we did. We did plaiting. Absolutely. And we wove rope. Absolutely. And some of that rope still survives up until today. Correct. And much of the thatch still survives. Thatch products still survive up until today. Now, Mike, you now have Inspire Cayman Training. Yeah. And sadly to say, the government still did not see why vocational training should be heavily invested in. Nope. But you have continued to persist. You have now set up a very successful program. And I am happy to report that I too participated in one of the Inspire Cayman Training programs with the Financial Peace University Training. Because as intelligent as I am, I did not understand finances the way that I came to understand them at the Financial Peace University. And I just want to take the time to encourage everyone to investigate the Financial Peace University course, which is available through Inspire Cayman Training. If you think you understand finances now, I challenge you. And if you're having financial problems, I encourage you to investigate, participate in the Financial Peace University course. But tell us some more about Inspire Cayman Training. As I've told you, and certainly our listening audience, I've been a social worker for over 30 years. I've done social work in many different settings, from the private sector to the public sector, always supporting and serving people. That's who I am, because so many people have served me. Inspire was born out of frustration. I worked in the Ministry of Education for 6 years. I worked specifically with at-risk children, you know, creating these programs that you and I were involved with, BEST, the Extended After School Program, Youth Act. None of it was really funded primarily from the government.
Right.
We always, Bonnie and I was always looking funds, but we were always dealing with public school kids because those were the youngsters that needed our support, needed our service. I got tired after I started to get very frustrated between 2015 and 2016 that we weren't doing enough. And I got also frustrated that one of the biggest issues that I saw happening were we had too many kids going to prison.
Yes.
We had a pipeline from John Gray, Clifton Hunter, and Suffolk right into Northwood Prison. You asked earlier about the whole levels of at-risk and juvenile statistics. I tracked over 180 students who had committed crimes as juveniles. The government knew this because I shared all of this data with them. I tracked them through our juvenile system, and what became very apparent is all of these, at least 80% of these youngsters were also committing crimes when they hit 16 or 17 years old or 18 years old, and now they were now in the adult courts. I shared all of that with them. What broke I would say what the straw that broke the camel's back for me was I tried to get another program, a diversion program, to stop this from happening, because what was happening is that a kid would, let's say a kid would do some sort of petty theft. He'd be arrested by the police department. He will then end up in youth court. A social worker will then be provided to him. He had all of these services, but he'd be prosecuted. So now he's already in the system. That kid is now a criminal. I wanted to stop that. I wanted that if that kid was found, let's say, shoplifting or something like that, we will divert him towards the services that he needed. He probably needed to be fed. He needed to be in school. Why was he suspended? Let's look at all the risk factors behind that. In 2017, I left Inspire and I transitioned to Hope Academy, and it was probably the best decision that I made because I saw education at the highest level. It restored faith that education could actually work. But I was frustrated because loads of the youngsters that I had worked with in the public schools were going to prison. They were consistently going to prison, and I became bitter, and I kept on complaining about it. And my wife got tired of hearing me complain about it, and she's like, "Dude, you need to do something about this. You know, like you need to do something." And I kept on saying, "But I don't have any money." And then she was like, "We do have money. Use the money for good." So we coupled our money together. I used my own personal finances. I was managing a skate park. That's another program that I've taken over. So I took over the skate park. I sold scooters out of the back of my car, and I raised $60,000 and I launched Inspire. It's licensed, it's accredited. You know, I worked 2 years at Hope Academy, and I was managing Inspire for 2 years, and it was the hardest thing that I've had to do. I worked almost 16-hour days, and after the election, so 2 years ago, I was running a full-time election, working at Hope Academy for 10 hours a day, and managing Inspire Cayman. And you know, after the election, I said, okay, I need to I need a transition to full-time with Inspire, and I've never looked back. Inspire have done more. When I started Inspire 5 years ago, Inspire was all about technical vocational education training. Today, Inspire has evolved. We are workforce development. We've had to go through that evolution because the people that are coming into us, the Caymanians that are coming into us, they are skilled. They need more than more skills. They need hope. Yes. What we are now doing is providing hope for the hopeless. I'm now having youngsters as young as 15 and 16 years old that by the time they get to us, their hands is in the air and they're losing hope that they have a place in ours. A place in our community, a place in our country. Their parents are struggling. They come to me looking a job, but multiple times, 99% of the people that come to me already have employment. So what I have designed Inspire to be is a place of service. I provide a service. I provide hope for folks. We have taken vocational program and life skills program and merged them. What we focus on 90% of the time is creating resilience within people, because they'll get a job. 99% of the people that complete our program move on into employment, and they're now keeping those employment. But we weren't finished. We needed more services because of all of the issues that I saw with the folks that we were serving. So we now have a part-time, we have a contracted therapist that works with us with all of our groups. She does individual life skills training and coaching. We are now in water sports. We've had loads of water sports operators who said, you know, I've been in the water 20 years and I don't have a license, right? Can you help me with that? Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, or, you know, I need first aid CPR because if someone falls over, I need to understand how to, you know, provide that service to them. So we've got involved and helped. You know, the course that you went through, that's now embedded in all of our full-time courses. Okay, so now we've gotten you a job, but you're still receiving assistance from NAU because you're not managing your money well. So we are now teaching people how to live on a budget, you know, how to look at health insurance different, life insurance different, how to look at your pension as an actual strategy for you to retire with dignity. Inspire has now become a holistic training program. We provide, you know, things like transportation, health insurance, whatever the needs. Just today, you know, I had to pick up some shoes for one of my students because I need her to look phenomenal when she comes in, right? So I'm like, go pick out some shoes. You already look very nice, but I need you to wear some really nice shoes. So we bought those shoes. I buy work shoes for people who are going into construction or automotive. We buy whatever we can afford in order to give them an advantage. Another thing that we've done, that we've taken on, that I never saw coming, was that employers all of a sudden started calling me. They were like, hey, well, who do you have? And I'm like, are you recruiting from us? And all of a sudden, you know, we now have at least 30, you know, organizations that are calling me saying, hey, I'll take a kid from you any day because I know the kid's going to show up for work, because we pound that through them. I want folks with resiliences because the world is going to kick them down, Tina. They're going to get beaten down. You know, I need them to get back up. You know, I need them to get back out there. I need them to show that they are tough enough to go through this, because it's not because you have a degree. I tell people all the time, I have a degree, but I still filed bankruptcy at 34. I had to go through that pain of filing bankruptcy to serve my community, because when people come in and say, well, you know, you don't know what it's like to be broke. Yes, I do. You know, yes, I do. I know what it's like, right? It's a lot of pain in that. I get it, but I had to live on a budget now.
Yes.
I had to actually live on a budget. Yes. I taught my daughters how to live on a budget. My wife and I live on a budget. So the exciting thing about Inspire is that we are small enough, we're nimble enough to change the things that what we're doing to actually suit what people need. What we've also done is I started doing, like, I get every month we get the report, we get the jobs report from work.
Yes.
I use that as a guide. All right. Here's what employers want. Over the last 5 years, I have met with over 200 employers.
So you use that as a guide as to what courses you're going to create.
That's it.
Yes.
That's it.
Wonderful. So Mike, you have moved from trying to make things happen to actually making things happen.
This is
from
it.
Trying to have
tired.
a difference made to making a difference.
I got tired of it.
So if persons wanted to, you got tired, but you didn't give up.
No, I got tired of waiting for the government to do it. So I said, you know something, I'm not waiting for them to do it anymore. And I got tired of saying it's not my responsibility. You know, I'm just a citizen. I've done my time. It's not my responsibility. Yes, it's my responsibility.
We all have a civic duty towards making our country work properly. So if persons wanted to either sponsor Inspire Cayman Training, or if persons wanted to be trained at Inspire Cayman Training, how would they get in contact with you?
They can send us an email. They can send it to info@inspirecaymantraining.com. they can give me a call at 939-1301. Or simply walk in. We are located at Grand Harbor. I say to people all the time, we're at the very back of Grand Harbor. We're right in between Vital Yoga Gym and Saltis Restaurant, right? Then our names are all on our windows and our doors. All they need to do is walk in. I sit in our reception area. Sean and I normally are the ones that are there. He's my partner in crime. With this as well, Catherine Hampson is one of our instructors who does a lot of really cool things for us. And the Ritter started Inspire with me. He's done an incredible amount of work to get us where we needed to go. We have about 2,000 square foot of space there. We have outgrown all of that now. So it's exciting times of, you know, what the next phase of Inspire is going to be. I
can tell you what it's going to be. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
It's going to be great and greater.
I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, it's a journey for me. It's a journey to see what that metamorphosis of it is going to be. I started off on Eastern Avenue with a room just a little bit bigger than what we're in, about 1,800 square foot of space. I had a TV screen on the that was on stilts, some chairs, and a lot of heart and faith that we were going to grow this, and it has exploded. I mean, my phone rings non-stop. I get at least 50 to 100 emails a day. You know, I mean, that's where we're at now.
Good. And we look forward to greatness from you, continued greatness from you. Michael, I want to thank you for all of your efforts that you have made. I thank your mother for all the efforts that she made. I want to thank you for continuing to invest in our children, continuing to try to arrest juvenile delinquency in the country, giving individuals a second chance. Persons who've been convicted have a really great and special challenge of getting employed. I want to thank you very much for the role that you play in helping persons who have been convicted in getting qualified and getting employed. And I also want to thank you for coming on to our good show today to talk about this really good program that you have. And I want to thank you, our viewers and our listeners, for tuning in for another segment of A Good Show. You can listen to A Good Show on Big Fish 95.5 FM on Saturdays and Wednesdays at 12 noon. And you can tune in and watch A Good Show on Cayman Life TV on Channel 33 on Logic on Sundays at 7 p.m. and again on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. If you would like more information about today's program or Inspire Cayman Training, you can also send us an email at agoodshow@christian.ky. Also consider becoming a sponsor of A Good Show. Thank you very much and God bless you.
A Good Show is proudly sponsored by H. Philip Banks Attorney at Law. For all of your legal needs, Philip Banks Attorney at Law.